Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. So, as the media continue to report on individuals who voted for Trump but are now having to close down their business due to the Orange One's tariffs, I saw a report that the US president has quietly cancelled about 100 tariffs, acknowledging that the inflationary effects of them is biting a bit. This is good news for a couple of reasons. The first, of course, is that if the report is correct, and I expect it is, Trump has basically admitted that his tariffs are contributing to a cost of living problem. Tariffs are inflationary, but Trump had tried to suggest otherwise. The second is that it would demonstrate that public opinion is still important to him. He's not confident that he is the absolute rule of the USA yet. Whenever Trump has to acknowledge public opinion and adjust policy accordingly, it is because he still believes he needs to care what voters think. That is encouraging. The moment this is no longer the case, that's the problem. Although it looks like it comes too late for Wilson Jones, the latest Trump voter to see his family business go up in smoke due to Trump's trade war. A trade war that, I remind people, Trump actually said he would trigger if he won the presidency. I'm sorry, but I have to say, it's one thing to get taken in by lies from populists. That's bad enough. But quite another to vote for an explicit policy which represents a threat to your business. This man's specific problem was not imports as such, but exports. He exports to China and Vietnam, or he did do anyway. Perhaps he thought that Trump would apply his tariffs and nobody else would hit the US with counter tariffs. If so, I still have little sympathy because Trump tried a trade war on a smaller scale during his first term and other countries most certainly retaliated. In fact, the only reason more countries aren't retaliating right now is because some, such as those of us in Europe, are being held hostage by the need for support against Russia. It's our own fault, but it gives Trump a hold over us. But China had no such problems retaliating, and that should have been obvious. So Wilson Jones's family-run sawmill in North Carolina is now shuttered up. Another derelict of Trump's second term in office. That's workers without jobs now, profits which don't exist and so can't be taxed, and local businesses suffering because the sawmill will no longer need their services or raw materials. So now they need to work out how they're going to make money in Trump's wasteland of commerce. Given that Trump wants to take America back to the Victorian age, complete with Victorian diseases coming back, maybe they could form themselves into a good old-fashioned 19th century style freak show. Roll up, ladies and gentlemen, come and behold nature's cruelest trickery. Gawp at the people who voted for Donald Trump despite their businesses being dependent upon trade with the very countries the president promised to destroy. Marvel at their cavernous crania, give them a tap on the head and listen to the pleasing echo. Absolute cretins. But what about the tariffs that Trump seems to have cancelled now? What's going on there? Well, I've not seen it widely reported, but it would appear that Trump has ordered about 100 tariffs cancelled, which would cover every affected country. The commodities seem to be mostly food, with some fertilisers as well. So not anything that massively helps the UK. Trump has acknowledged that in some cases his tariffs raised prices. No, mate, in all cases that's how tariffs work. They're literally a government-sanctioned increase in prices. But of course, Trump has tried to claim that the exporting companies would just reduce their own prices to be competitive and absorb the costs, which is batshit. Not only can exporters not afford to do that to the extent Trump applied tariffs, but that wouldn't be of any help to the United States, because if that were happening, those exports would still be competitively priced in America, wouldn't they? What's happened here is Trump has reflected on the fact that grocery prices are a government killer around the world, something he's been well aware of for some time, because he made it a big part of his presidential campaign. He knows about it. So he's had to back off on the tariffs, not for the first time because, well, taco. For fear of food inflation and rising costs for farms inflicting more defeats on his Republicans next year. It also means, I suppose, having to let Brazil off. I notice, in terms of the commodities having their tariffs cancelled, coffee beans and beef, which Brazil is a major producer of. So unless Trump has maintained the Brazilian tariffs specifically for them, I guess that means Brazil have a nice little boost out of this as well. They faced him down. According to the report, the White House responded by saying, well, the purpose of the tariffs is to protect American production, but there are some things the US doesn't produce, so it doesn't make sense to put tariffs on them. Which, yes, that's logical. If you're going to use tariffs as a protectionist measure, as most do, you apply it to products your country actually makes. But that begs a couple of questions. Why didn't they realise this 7 months ago? The tariffs were universal, and the stated intention was to balance trade according to Trump's childish calculations. So why were the tariffs only applied to products that are produced in the USA then? Well, because that wouldn't have made sense in terms of how Trump calculated the tariff rates. It was based on overall trade balance, and even then using dodgy data, not trade balance on American industries. The fact is that Trump is having to change the goalpost yet again because his tariffs haven't had the intended impact and they're actually costing him at the ballot box. And this change is purely about election thinking. But there's another question as well. According to AP News, right, who reported on it, the cancelled tariffs include beef. The US produces beef. It's quite famous for its shit quality beef, at least. Although, yes, I know it probably produces some decent quality stuff as well. But we know it produces beef because the American beef industry were up in arms when first Trump's trade war resulted in China blocking all imports of American beef and bought them from Australia and South America instead. And then more recently when Trump talked about raising the quotas for Argentine beef to do a solid for his mate President Milei. Beef farmers are numerous enough to have kicked up a bit of a stink about that. I've not yet seen how they've reacted to the news that Trump has now unilaterally cancelled the extra tariffs on beef without securing reciprocal deals elsewhere. Except, I guess, with the UK where we raised quotas on American beef in return for a trade deal. So it's not even that the cancelled tariffs are for foods which America doesn't produce. It's just for foods and fertilisers because Trump has recognised that the increased prices were causing him political pain. Maybe if I knock down the price of burgers again, they'll stop whining about the Epstein files, he's presumably thinking. I suspect what people are actually thinking is Trump chickened out again. Finally, the report suggests that Trump has been musing on the idea of maybe using the customs duties raised to give Americans $2,000 checks next year. It's said that Trump provided no specifics on the timing or amount. Well, let me hazard a guess now. The timing will be just before the midterms, and the amount will be the people in critical swing districts. Just a guess, of course. Still, how will he pay for them? He says from the customs duties, but there are a few problems with that. First, those customs duties were supposed to cover the deficit left by his latest rich guy tax cuts. Second, those customs duties are not raising that much if they reduce the level of exports, which they do, and he's having to downgrade or completely cancel them due to the economic pain they're causing. And third, the tariffs may not even be in place next year if the Supreme Court ruled them unlawful, as they seem to be preparing to. Trump's strategy is just unravelling like a mummy in Scooby-Doo at this point. I wonder if there'll be much left of the tariffs in another year or two. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and please subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I'll see you later.